When our hearts are filled with God's love, everything we do is filled with joy. Even the challenges around us can turn our hearts to be filled with joy. To spread this love, let us all join together and spread happiness. Support Shalom. No gift is too small. No gift is too big.
Once upon a time in a monastery, the monks were involved in a heated discussion on the cause of human suffering. Some said it came from selfishness, others from delusion, yet others from the inability to distinguish the real from the unreal. When the abbot, the master of the monastery, was consulted, he said, "All suffering comes from a person's inability to sit still and be alone." This is a powerful story from the book 1 Minute Wisdom by an awe-inspiring writer, Father Anthony de Mello. All suffering comes from a person's inability to sit and be alone. Be alone. That single line captured my thoughts, and it began to echo time and again. That is something I have always wanted to do. Be still and sit alone, because in silence, God speaks. I remember Jack, my friend from Sheffield, telling me about an abbey he was planning to visit in the Isle of Wight. Quarr. A place of complete silence, a Benedictine monastery that has played a significant role in Catholic monasticism in England. I believe it was God's plan, and I set sail. The Isle of Wight, a blessed island in the English Channel, is the second most populous island in England. It is a county. It is about 4 miles off the coast of Hampshire. As the voyage began from Southampton, I said a prayer my mentor taught me. Lord Jesus Christ, my God, be my companion, guide and protector during my journey. Keep me from all danger, misfortune and temptation. By your divine power, grant me a peaceful and successful journey and safe arrival. Tiny boats, mighty ships, medium-sized ferries, all on the same waters. Like how God created the humankind equal. It brought back many memories of my first trip to the Isle of Wight some 20 years ago. In search of sublime silence, in search of the good Lord, who finds silence the best tool to speak, I am at the Abbey of Quarr, the house of God. My heart reminded me of the verse from Psalms. I will come into your house in the greatness of your mercy, and in fear I will worship toward your holy temple. As expected, the compound of the abbey was clothed in silence. Apart from occasional chirping of birds, squirrel calls, wind swaying in the trees, it was absolute silence. The history of Quarr Abbey began with religious persecution in France in the beginning of the last century. The monks of Shalom, France, came to near Ventnor, a small town on the island, in 1901. They were voluntary exiles from the unjust laws against religious life in France. There begins the history of this blessed house of God. Father Javier Perrin is the abbot of the community of Quarr. In a Benedictine monastery, the abbot occupies the place of Christ, according to the rule of Saint Benedict, based on Romans 8:15, which goes, "You have received the spirit of adoption of sons, by which we call out, Abba, Father." He spoke to me about his vocation and the roots of monasticism.
I come from a Catholic family in which there were a few people who were either priest or religious. So the idea was not unfamiliar to me. It's only when I was one day visiting a monastery with a friend and I asked him, "What do you want to do in your life?" And he answered, "I would like to be a monk." And I had never thought of that before. And from that day, I was about 14 or 15, I suppose, I began to be interested in monastic life, to visit monasteries. And then one day I came to the monastery which I joined in France, the Abbey of Gregorian. And there I made an experience of the church. Not only a place for me and my concerns and my life and my projects, but a place where really these people were in the heart of the church. And so I discovered a sort of universal dimension, which is at the heart of monasticism, because it is not about being you alone with your God in a sort of cozy way. It is about being here with God, of course, but for the world, for the whole world. And that is what I call this Catholic dimension of monasticism. Monastic life began in Europe in the 4th century. Saint Benedict lived in the 6th century. And basically, in the first millenary, there was no other form of religious life than monastic life. Then, in the second millenary of the Christendom, we have different forms, such as preachers or teachers or nurses and so on, and they have come to be a bit specialized. This evolution did not happen in the same way in the Eastern churches, where monasticism has kept being the only religious life, form of religious life, and has adapted to the new needs of the world.
In April 1911, local builders began the construction of the Abbey Church. It was completed the next year and consecrated on October 12, 1912. The guest house was finished in 1914, and the first guest was the French philosopher Jacques Maritain. During the First World War, the guest house was used for the convalescence of wounded soldiers.
Well, there have been two monasteries here. The first was founded in 1132 from Normandy, and that was destroyed by Henry VIII, as all the other monasteries were in 1536, and the stone was used for building forts round the Solent, because war games are much more fun than monasticism. And then so the first monastery was destroyed by persecution. Our monastery was founded because of persecution in the 1900s, when the community of Shalom had to leave France because of the Freemason government there, and our monastery was founded here. And the monks of Shalom went back to their home in 1922, and then they left here a group of monks who were the founders of our present community. And so one destroyed by persecution, the other founded because of persecution. So whatever you do to monks will come bouncing back.
To maintain silence is an integral spiritual discipline of the Benedictine community. Silence in Quarr means not only to refrain from speech, but also to become free from the endless internal dialogue and mental chattering of everyday lives. Although silence is paramount, the purpose of the monastic community of Quarr Abbey, like in all other Benedictine communities across the world, is to seek and praise God, and they do it by singing the divine office using the Gregorian Chant.
What we call Gregorian chant is the chant which has been used in the liturgy from, let's say, the 6th century onwards. And it is the body of antiphons, of musical setting of text, mainly from the Bible, which are used in the liturgy of Mass and the liturgy of the hours of the office, the divine office. It has a complex story, what the specialists would call properly Gregorian chant, has been composed, we more or less agree that it had been composed between the 8th and 9th century, and then transmitted all over Europe. Everywhere. It was a sort of shared language of prayer, but as a language you had always a dialect in different regions and an accent here and there. So there were traditions here and there. So it was not, and also it was not the time of the books. All this was learned by heart, more or less, by the people joining very young the choirs and learning by heart a very big repertory. So it was transmitted, and at the same time, or after a few centuries, it was understood in another way and began to be the plain chant, which at the end, I mean the 18th century, could be something very heavy and not very harmonious. The 19th century was a time of revival of the Gregorian chant, and the Abbey of Shalom in France, the very monks who came here in the beginning of the 20th century, the Abbey of Shalom has been the center for the rediscovery of Gregorian chant. They went all over Europe, collected the manuscript, copied, and then made photos of the manuscripts and compared the manuscripts and could see the different traditions. And then they came to publish a book, or books really, books of Gregorian chant with a sort of official authority.
Monastic life is a life of discipline and self-denial. God is the center of every monk. In silence, they speak to him. Father Nicholas Spencer, the guest master of the community, has been a part of the Abbey of Quarr for the last 33 years, and he says,
obviously everything has its ups and downs, but I would say I have absolutely no regrets about becoming a monk. It's been a most wonderful 33 years. We have time in the monastery to do what we consider the most important thing, which is to worship God, to seek God in silence and solitude, and to also try and be an oasis of peace and prayer for the many people in our very troubled world who need that oasis and peace of prayer. So it's been a very, very good 33 years.
So why do these men give them up in the burning bush called God?
I don't think it's we that encounter God. I think it's God that encounters us. The initiative's always on his side. And he speaks in the heart, in the quietness, in the silence. As in that scene in the Old Testament where he's not in the thunder or the lightning or the earthquake. He's in the silence of the heart. So essentially, being in the presence of God, allowing him to encounter one, is a matter of being silent. And the monastery is an ideal place to do that. So I'm aware of his presence, in prayer anyway, especially in a place like this, which is a holy place.
Our Lady is the patroness of the Quarr Abbey. The Abbey is officially known as the Abbey of Our Lady of Quarr. Christian life is incomplete without veneration to the lovely Madonna. I spent some time in silence before her statue.
It simply means Our Lady of the Quarry. And one of the old forms it's written in is Sancta Maria de Quadraria, which is simply the Latin for quarry. That's why we pronounce it Quarr, not Quarr. The statue of Our Lady of Quarr in the church, at the east end of the church, above the high altar, was given to the monks in 1912 by the monks of Boyron. The monks of Boyron had known persecution by Bismarck. And so when the monks came here, they wanted to show a bit of support. So they gave our beautiful statue of Our Lady and the Holy Child. During the two world wars, the French and English community was singing the praises of God here under the gaze of the Queen of Peace, Our Lady, who was a German Our Lady, showing that the national divisions, even in time of war, have no significance to monks and those who are deeply committed to their Christian faith.
So this has been the place of Our Lady for centuries. And to a certain extent, Our Lady is the continuity and the connection between the old monastery and the new monastery. So she is very much at the center in the church. You can see in the church she's at the center of the spirit of the place. It doesn't mean that we pray many prayers to Our Lady. We do say rosaries, we do keep the feast of Our Lady, and that sort of things. But we are, all of us, very aware that she is present. She is with us. And this house, in some way, belongs to her, is consecrated to God through her.
Visitors from all over the world visit the Abbey for reasons spiritual and silence. Benedictine spirituality has inspired millions of people since the 6th century to be introduced to God through silence.
We have guests, as I say, we just had one from Australia, we had quite a lot from America, we had one from New Zealand, from all parts of the United Kingdom, for Catholics, Pentecostals, Orthodox, a lot of people who have no particular religious belief, who are just seeking, and also Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists. Anybody is welcome, providing they want to come and spend some time apart in peace, and they respect that this is a Roman Catholic house. So, we've had an enormous variety of guests who come here for many reasons. We've had a few other Not recently, I don't think. A few other film star guests, acting guests we've had. But sometimes I don't know. And I would know about Anthony Minghella, but you know, I sometimes just know as somebody as David, and then you find out they've got a very significant job in the world. But people come here because they want to be silent, they want to have a bit of peace. It's not important what jobs they do or where they come from.
The Eucharist is the centre of the monks of Quarr Abbey. The breviary they chant every day is a thanksgiving on behalf of the world. The monks evangelise through their lives. The Abbey is an example of how a virtuous Christian life should be lived.
I think the monks evangelize mainly by their presence, by their very existence as a community of people who gather daily 7 times a day in the church in order to celebrate God. And it is a silent testimony, not with words, but with actions. And our main action is praise in the liturgy. Then, of course, the second aspect is hospitality. We are a very open place where many people come as visitors or as guests who stay with us for a few days or a few weeks. And with these people we can engage and give them the word of the gospel. In this way we evangelize firstly by welcoming people, making them welcome in this place, and then listening to them and trying, well, at least to hear their questions and then give some answers if we have, and leading them to Christ. I think it's these two aspects. The community as itself is a silent predication, preaching of the word, and then we have this contact with the people in which we engage in discussion, and then we give the gospel. We do not go outside in our tradition, solemn tradition. We don't go outside in parishes or schools or anything else. We welcome people coming in the place, and there we try to evangelize.
Sacrament of reconciliation or confession is one of the main reasons people come to the Abbey.
There's a strong tradition of reconciliation in this house, and especially in the past we had very famous spiritual fathers, and people used to come to meet them from all over England, and very different people as well. These people died a few years ago, but now we have discovered that we have to propose reconciliation to many Christians on the island as well, people who belong to parishes and find it a bit easier to go to the monastery where they are sure to have people who have time for that. So we have tried to develop a little this ministry of reconciliation for people. We offer it on a regular basis each week, and also whenever people want to make us person.
2 days in the Abbey of Quarr, I understood what was meant by divine silence. A monk once wrote, and I felt it was truer than truth, that inner health comes with regular times of silence is rudely denied to people in all the great cities of our world today, where incessant din is inescapable. The Quarr Abbey and its monks were so graceful and kind. I will carry what I learned from them all through my life, for the Gospel says, "Ask and you shall receive." I asked for it, and they gave it to me.